had a lot of trial and error in the beginning of what was working for me, how often to eat, how much to eat. But after a couple months, I felt so much better physically, my stomach.
Well, hello, Jillian. Good afternoon or good morning or just barely good afternoon for you.
Early afternoon, but yeah.
East Coast to West Coast, animal based, carnivore, male, female, XY, everything in between discussion.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I'm new to the West Coast, so
That's right. You're originally from the East Coast, huh?
yep. And then just got here in December, had to escape the winter. So
How's it going for you so far out there?
I absolutely love it. I love being able to get sunshine every day, not letting the weather stop me from getting out and feeling good and not getting those winter blues that I used to get on the East Coast, which there are definitely things you can do for that, but it makes it easier when you're in a warm climate, or at least a mild climate.
Yeah, here the weather's halfway decent in Southern California anyway, right?
Yeah, it's better than Maine. So
Maine. Yeah, that's right. All the way from Maine. So from Maine to Southern California, that's about as cross country and diagonal as it gets, eh?
yeah, I mean, if you're unhappy with where you are, why not make the change and not complain about it? And that's kind of just what I did.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty big change.
Yeah, definitely. But I went to school in North Carolina and then I lived in New York City. So I love starting new and trying out new things and meeting new people. I think it's super important and it's definitely helped me learn and grow a lot.
So glad you said that because those are the perfect words I want to open this up with as far as in trying new things, learning and growing. And, something that you've been exploring for your own health and growth about yourself has been what you've been eating
Yeah.
from what you were eating. Do you want to kind of delve into that a little bit?
Yeah. So I started animal based at the beginning of October of 2021. And I was at a point where I had to make a change. I have celiac and I had gotten gluten. So basically, I'd had like a small molecule of gluten sometime in August, and my entire body just reacted. I was extremely inflamed. I couldn't really keep any nutrients in. I had no idea what to eat. And I became depressed, low energy. I was losing all my muscle. And after a month and a half of that, I just really knew that I needed to do something drastic. I already was eating very healthy for about 6 years. I ate pretty much paleo. And I would like dabble back and forth with introducing other things and testing out different ways of eating. But I would say that's the main way I ate. And it started to just still not work. It seemed like the nuts and the seeds and the vegetables were just honestly making my body more inflamed. And I
Mm.
couldn't figure out why I kept losing weight and losing muscle. And I wasn't able to digest a lot of fat and protein either. And I didn't know. I was trying to get my fats from nuts and seeds and avocado, but it wasn't really working. So I heard about animal based through TikTok, honestly. And I
Nice.
just decided one day, like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to see what happens. So I just kind of started down that road and had a lot of trial and error in the beginning of what was working for me, how often to eat, how much to eat. But after a couple months, I felt so much better physically. My stomach, my IBS and celiac almost were in remission. And
Mm.
even within just a couple weeks of eating that way, my depression had completely lifted. And I've dealt with like depression and anxiety for almost my entire life. And it had gotten really bad that September. And yeah, just within a couple weeks, it was completely lifted and I felt like me again.
Yeah, it's awesome for a lot
Yeah.
of good reasons.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was your anxiety and depression throughout life? Was any of that also food related or dietarily related?
Yeah, I was a dancer, and dance was pretty much my whole life. And so I wanted to be able to dance to my maximum ability, but I also did have a lot of stomach issues. So it was hard trying to find the right foods that I could fuel myself for my workouts, but also wouldn't cause me a lot of bloat and stomach pain. And that was always hard for me. So I could never really figure out because people would say, eat more vegetables, eat more variety, eat all the colors in the
Yeah.
plant.
Yeah.
I was doing that and I still wasn't feeling great. And I would be bloated after meals, sluggish. And then it would make me want to eat less. And then I wouldn't feel fueled for my workouts.
I can relate. I can
Yeah.
definitely relate. Growing up, myself growing up in the South, had plenty of, let's say, maybe not the healthiest things around, but at the same time, had good roots with a good mother that kind of introduced me and kept me in the right way with food and nutrition. But understanding that performance as an athlete and thinking like, all right, carbs for sure. Use these things to supplement with a la fruits. Get a little extra boost or something like that. Eat your veggies, eat your veggies, eat your veggies, but still experiencing some of the similar or same things like you were talking about, a lot of bloating, various types of inflammation, or just adverse reactions to things that I didn't know were coming from the food that I was eating at the time until years later that I removed those items and then realized like, wow, those really had that much of an impact on how I was not just performing, but feeling, right? Like I love so much of that food from home. I love most food like you do, and there's nothing malicious about the things that are out there, but it's the facts that remain the same. There's how things taste is one thing. The emotional response that they kind of elicit is another thing. Maybe it reminds you of Maine. Maybe it reminds me of New Orleans. Maybe it brings up childhood, good or bad. It takes us back places. Certain foods we connect with through thought and through emotion rather than present experience. So how things taste and how things make us feel are two totally different things, right? And I think so many of us are front footed on how things taste rather than how they make us actually feel. And it sounds like you really kind of started to figure that out pretty quickly in a short amount of time. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've always loved all of the vegetables and the healthy foods. I grew up
Yep.
eating from the
Same.
garden, eating fresh produce. I loved big salads, but those things just don't agree with my system. And from going animal based, I honestly don't miss those things anymore either. And my taste buds have almost changed, and I crave more of the meat and the fat, anyways. And I do include some fruits and squash. So if I am wanting something like that, I can have those. But I don't miss having a big salad. And I was the salad girl that would have the salads, and I would eat sweet potato with almond butter. And I thought I could never give up nut butter. That was my thing. I could never give up nut butter. I loved almond butter. And now I
Oh
haven't
yeah.
had nut butter since October and I don't miss it. And I think
Wow.
because I'm eating raw butter, tallow, animal fats, it really satiates that craving. And I used to have acid reflux every time I would eat nuts, seeds, vegetables, and I haven't had acid reflux since going animal based. And that used to be something
Wow.
I struggled with every day. I would take medication after meals. I would supplement with ginger 5 times a day, anything to get the reflux down, and I haven't had any.
Wow. Yeah, acid reflux is one of the most common issues that people have, GI or otherwise, in the world, and definitely in the United States. It's one of the most commonly prescribed prescription drugs for preventing of that or dealing with it. But it's amazing how many people be rid of the need for either OTC stuff or RX because it completely goes away when they stop eating certain foods, usually the greens and the colors,
Yeah,
and stick to the animal stuff.
no GI doctor told me to reduce vegetables. If anything, they told me to include more fiber and to take fiber supplements via psyllium husk or some of those other powders, which would just mess up my stomach more. So I've actually been able to get off all stomach medications that I was
Wow.
on prescription ones, and I was on homeopathic ones, and I've been able to get off all of them by going animal based.
Wow. So no more heartburn, no more stomach issues, feeling better, depression gone.
Yeah.
It sounds
The
like a
only,
pretty good deal.
yeah. And the only time that I will have, maybe a minor flare up if, I recently was on a trip and I think that I did accidentally ingest a little bit of gluten one night at dinner.
Mm.
Um, and I've been recovering from that the past 3 days. And by going back to my animal based way of eating, I'm definitely recovering a lot better than I would have in the past. And I think that it's getting out of my system quicker and I'm feeling much better than I would have been with the way I was eating before.
Wow. So just of gluten will get
Yeah.
you. Yeah. Do you think it was in like the sauce, like maybe a flour that was probably cooked up? I mean, I say that again back to being from New Orleans. Every sauce we make is a roux, so it starts with a
Yeah.
flour.
So I always tell them that I have a gluten allergy, but there could be any bit of cross contamination. I think that maybe
Yep.
they made just soy sauce and that has wheat in it.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, I had terrible pains right after. I get a rash all over my face, and
Mhm.
I immediately, but I also the next day immediately came home, made my homemade bone broth, started eating a ton of raw butter, raw milk to get those good enzymes and probiotics, and just got back to my, strict meat type eating, carnivore, I would say, but I still do include, some plants, but for
That's
the most
great.
carnivore way of eating is what I mostly do.
That's great. I was talking the other day with someone kind of discussing what I call the three rings: animal based, carnivore, and lion.
Yes.
Right? And animal based being the biggest of the three. And what is, the way I define animal based would be as long as the majority of your calories are coming from animals or animal byproducts, animal based. So if the denominator of your fraction is larger than the numerator, animal based. So if you have 2,000 calories in the day, 1,001 need to come from animals or animal byproducts. Now, I would not recommend to someone else to just put, Fritos and ices and whatever else they want in the numerator and say, hey, well, you said majority of calories denominator animal based, so the numerator can be whatever it want. I'm definitely not saying that. I would put the most optimal and healthy things in the numerator if I'm going to have other than animal objects in the diet. But that would be for me the way I would define animal based. So that's the bigger ring. Carnivore within that, obviously animals and animal byproducts, and then lion within that with just the ruminants, salt and water. When you first got into animal based eating, obviously your health was your main concern, right? You were doing this in the interest of your health, trying to feel better, trying to heal, trying to cure, right? And what was that like? Thinking about going into this world that for many people is intimidating, it's controversial, and goes against the grain of what we believe. Many of us believe what we were raised on, how we've eaten for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years for people, right? When they come into the diet sometimes and they think like, well, how can have been wrong all my life? Or I used to be a vegan or plant-based health coach and dietitian, and now I'm, looking to delve into this world. What was it like for you before you took the plunge, so to speak? What were you thinking? And then when you finally did it, what was that like, just getting into things?
I just couldn't believe that people were eating these large portions of red meat and able to digest them, honestly. I thought there's no way I can eat that much. Like, how am I going to be able to go to the bathroom without all the fiber from vegetables? I was definitely a little bit skeptical in that way, but I also was pretty like desperate where I just wanted to try it out. And I kind of did it in a way that was intuitive, where I started including a lot of eggs, smoked salmon, and then red meat in like terms of grass-fed beef and grass-fed lamb. And I remember the first week I did have chicken too. And then after like 2 weeks, all I wanted was red meat. Not want anything to do with a chicken, a turkey, even seafood. I didn't really want. All I wanted was ground beef for my first meal and a big steak for my second meal. And I did that for probably 3.5 months. That's all I wanted. I probably had salmon like 2 or 3 times, and I didn't have any chicken after that first time. I was not interested in that. I maybe had some corn and soy free bacon a few times here and there with my ground beef, but I literally just wanted red meat. And then I also was eating like the seasonal, there was squash at a farm that was local to me in Maine. So I'd have a bit of squash just because I still was afraid of eating just meat. I was like, that's so different. So
Sure.
I felt like I had to include some plants. So I did include squash and avocado, some plantains. But I've
Nice.
always eaten more on the low carb side. So I wasn't really concerned about not including like potatoes or rice because those things have always tended to flare up my stomach, and I've always felt better eating lower carb. And that's what I've always gravitated towards. I really look up to Mark Sisson, and he definitely is more of a lower carb type guy. And I read all his books when I was in college 8 years ago. I was doing Bulletproof Coffee and all of that. So
Nice. Nice.
I naturally was able to kind of transition into the diet and feel really good doing it. And now I definitely, now that my body has healed more and I do feel like my digestive system has healed, I include a lot more variety. I definitely eat chicken and pork and turkey and tuna and salmon just because I'm craving those things now. Whereas before, I was like, all I want are giants. My body was deprived and I needed it.
Is that what you feel that it was like when you're talking about the intuitive reason for your eating and ground beef in the morning, big steak in the afternoon, and slowly but surely no longer wanting the salmon or the chicken? Was it your body saying, "Hey, this is great on the palate, but like we need these
Yes.
things, so we want those things"?
Yes, it was all I was craving. And I'm very in tune with my body. So I do feel like I am able to be very intuitive. And just the thought of having chicken like didn't sound good to me. And so I really do think it was my body needing the nutrients that are in the red meat because I wasn't getting those before. And it was just like needing more and more and more. So I do try to listen to my body the best I can. And that's what I do now, where, some days I'll realize I'll go a couple days and I've eaten all carnivore because I didn't have any sort of need or feeling like I wanted a fruit or wanted any type of avocado or plant that I include. And then I'll all of a sudden want that thing and I'll have it. But for me, it's not an emotional connection. It's definitely more of like an innate feeling of my body needing a certain nutrient. I really try to separate my emotions from intuitive eating, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like utilitarian,
Yeah.
like use, right?
Yeah.
Eating to live versus living to eat, like so many of us do, and still do
Except
at
things that
times.
are so enjoyable that it does like elicit emotion because I'm eating a ribeye and I think it's the best tasting thing no matter how often I have it. Or I'll have a strawberry and it's like the sweetest, most amazing dessert for me. And I'm able to moderate it. I know some people aren't able to moderate the sugars or the carbs, but I'll have 2 strawberries and be completely satisfied, or I'll have one piece of dark chocolate and completely satisfied. So I'm really able to trust myself in that way as well.
That's amazing. Good for you. That is willpower, self-discipline, a lot of things, because I can speak to the other side of that coin and not having that discipline for a long time, and can relate to how difficult it can be, to where I can almost be like a Pringles can with the once you pop, you can't stop mentality of, if it's a piece of dark chocolate, it used to be for me, well, it's going to be the bar or several bars. If it's a the thing of strawberries, you might as well leave the carton on the table, you know, to where I was just, it was a lot of mindless consumption. And that's been a big fascination of mine with the diet, with, you know, animal-based carnivore or lion, is because I've always thought of myself as a scientist more than anything. And the job of a scientist traditionally is to constantly try and disprove the hypothesis, right? That's the part of the scientific purpose of the scientific method. It's not to try to prove law or theory or create dogma, but it's to try to disprove your hypothesis. And I keep failing at trying to disprove this one because I keep thinking, no, this can't be it. Let me go back that way. And sure enough, boom, run into a hard stop sign, right? I get sick, something flares up, adverse reaction nonetheless. You know, sleep goes to hell, depression sets back in, my mood completely drops off, my want to do things, desirability, my magnetism with people, with work, with the world and life fades away. Whereas when I come back to the light, like I say, it's like almost like life starts coming to you, you know, where God, feelings turn into just beyond feelings. But that's the understanding for me, is the feeling. And as great as things taste, and as much as I'm able to still relate to them emotionally and return to childhood or have memories from the past or friends or places and stuff like that, I can't deny how the things make me feel. And the feeling is really understanding. And I'm glad you brought up Mark, because his place is about a mile and a half that way here in Miami Beach.
Yeah.
And you yourself are now soon to be a primal health coach too, yeah?
Yeah, so I'd been thinking about doing primal health coaching since last August, and it was on my mind, and I was just waiting for the right time. So I finally felt like about a month ago, it was the right time. I've settled in San Diego. Um, my gut health is really good. My overall mental health is really good. So I felt ready to take on a course. So I am getting certified so that I can help other people heal themselves like I've healed myself, because I really wish that this knowledge was more prevalent and that I had known about this sooner. So I just want to help others in any way that I can. And being certified through his institute definitely aligned most with the way that I eat and my way of living and the lifestyle, because I do think the lifestyle outside of eating is just as important. And his course really emphasizes that. Just quickly going back to like emotional eating, I find that sometimes I do get caught in that, and I realize it's because I'm not fulfilling these other parts in my life, such as like my social life, self-care, having a hobby, playing, all of those types of things. So when I find myself falling into those patterns of emotional eating, then I'll try to fill my cup in these other ways, and it usually fixes it.
Yeah, nail on the head. And that's for that. I agree with you because I totally understand what you're saying and speak from the same place. But to everybody else out there, the way I see that and kind of what you're talking about the different cups is when you get attuned to having so much joy throughout a day, or let's say dopamine, right? And you have an allotment, a daily allotment. And if you gotten conditioned to hitting that number, let's call that number 100 every day for a long time, any of those days where it's not hitting 100, you're going to be like, man, I don't feel good. Something doesn't feel right. I'm a little mopey. I'm a little depressed. My energy's kind of low. Well, what'd you do today? Well, I didn't see anybody. I stayed inside. I didn't eat well. I didn't do anything. So where did you get your dopamine from? Where, you know, that deficit in the budget, it's not being met. So what sources? Well, I've been scrolling on my phone. I did a little bit of laptop stuff where it turned into a YouTube rabbit hole, which turned into a Netflix rabbit hole. And then I ordered some food. It's kind of all falsified love. It's all falsified satisfaction, right? There's no work done to really get it. There's no having to deal with something to create it, to make it happen. You didn't have to go anywhere, right? It was all kind of isolated, given. Whereas, and I'm sure this is what you're kind of saying, or correct me if I'm wrong, when you put in some good work, whether it's yourself, with friends, family, with actual work, that feels great. You've done something that is important, whether it's to you, to them, or to the employer, so to speak. It's self-satisfying, and that self-satisfaction brings wholesomeness. That wholesomeness brings dopamine, right? Hey, I feel good about that. I can hang my hat on something for the day. If I've done some good self-care, whether it's the habits, the routine, reading, writing, meditation, exercise, spiritual and physical nutrition, I say. You hit a bunch of those, like boop, 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 boop. There goes the hits again. Now we're not in that 50, 60, 70, like we're starting to get up to that 100 range. And then when you fit in a meal, a good meal, a great meal into that, boom, you're all the way up there, if not maybe even exceeded it. But if you don't have all those other things, and let's say you're dieting, and I can definitely speak to this, when you're trying to reduce weight, just body recomposition in any way, gain, lose, maintain, and you're so hyper focused on the food, if you forego everything else, then yeah, your fixation is going to totally be there. Meaning that's going to be the main source of your dopamine, because you don't have the friends, you don't have the outings, you don't have the other things that are going on, and you've kind of alienated yourself, good or bad. But nonetheless, now you're going to go have that meal. It's going to be great, no doubt. But then you're still going to have this void of like, why don't I feel right? I should feel better. And like, what can I do to make up for that? That's emotional eating right there, I would say. And that's what
Yes.
I used to do as a binge eater, years ago, getting diagnosed with it. I didn't understand why I was doing it. But years later, I came to find out it was a lack of wholesomeness. I was not feeling whole. What I was doing was not bringing me self-satisfaction. I didn't feel good. I was depressed. I was loathing. I was in a, mindset of fear and scarcity. And by not doing things, that was giving me anxiety. And what is the kryptonite to anxiety? Action. And so I can tell anybody, you want to feel a little bit better, just get moving. You want to not feel the way you are, do something, do anything. Start scribbling on a piece of paper, start drawing. Yeah, I don't care if you don't draw, but just kind of do, because otherwise, if you sit there, you're going to get beaten. It's almost inevitable, especially the readily available ease of things now, to where I can be like, just order it, bring it to me, perfect, and I'll just knock myself out, to which I also found solace with, getting clean and sober, and then finding a way to still get drugs delivered by way of apps, to where I could comatose myself with, enough refined sugar and processed carbs, was a pretty good trade-off. But again, it took me, like you said earlier, trial and error, a lot of banging the head against the wall to figure that out. And then finally, and even still, after having kind of learned that, there's still a give and take, because the grip is so very strong. And that's for all of us, I think, because there is an AA for alcohol. There is a, addicts as well. There's gamblers, et cetera, sex addicts. There's multiple types of AA. There's not one for sugar.
Yeah, exactly. And I always struggled with eating disorders and disordered eating, whatever you want to call it. And even though I do consider myself recovered in a way, you always have the memory of it. So it could be easy to slip back into it or to go back to those behaviors. So just like with alcohol, you have to constantly be working on it. I know that alcoholics they consider themselves to always be alcoholics, even though they're in recovery. Whereas with eating disorders, for some reason, people think that you can be 100% recovered. And I don't know that I completely agree with that. I think that it's always going to be something to be working on, and something that I'll always deal with, just because I was in a world with dance where it was very prevalent, and it is inscribed in my brain what I was told and how I should eat, how I should look. So I don't want people to think it's easy or that I have it easy every day. It's always a struggle of making sure to use those positive coping mechanisms and filling up my cup in those certain ways. I don't always want to go to my workout class, but when I do and I feel amazing after, then it's always worth it. And I feel like even back in January, I was starting to kind of get a bit down on myself because I have been working on weight gain and gaining muscle, and I was getting hyper fixated on it because it wasn't happening as quick as I wanted. But then once I started focusing on other things, it seemed like that's all falling into place again. So I've just spent this past month or so, I feel like I have such a good routine and I'm feeling so good. So it is important to hit all those aspects.
That's awesome. And yeah, I agree. I can probably count on a single hand what um, the times that I regretted going to work out when I didn't feel like it and regretted it afterwards, because it doesn't happen, because it's almost guaranteed that I'm going to be grateful that I went. I'm going to be so happy that I went. Whereas the opposite is almost 100% true. You don't go, regret, guaranteed. You don't go, you're definitely going to feel worse. You're definitely not going to feel better. The gamble is get through that little bit of attrition, and kind of push past that. And then once you get in there, you don't have to go full speed ahead, but just get the train wheels kind of going, and like slowly picking up steam. And then you get a little bit of a boost in there. And then now you're kind of sailing. But to
Exactly.
not go, yeah, it's almost like the guaranteed, ugh.
Consistency is key. It's not about being 100% every workout. It's just about getting there. And I do not have 100% amazing workouts every time, but I still will always feel better after. I went Thursday after I had flown home from San Francisco, wasn't feeling great. I had been glutened, and no, I didn't have the best workout, but after it, I definitely felt 20% better. That's important.
That's amazing. Good for you. I was similar this morning. It took me 3 tries to go off on a run, or rather, I stopped about after a half mile. I was like, God, I'm really not here today. I'm tired. I had a big leg workout yesterday. I'm just running on tired legs. I was like, no, come on, get it in a few miles. I picked it back up again, made it about a mile, and I was like, I'm really not feeling this right now. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. Sun was just coming up. It was, gorgeous on the beach. Couldn't be better. But I was just, my head wasn't there. And then finally I was like, come on, man, we got here. We're here. Let's go. And then, I got it done. And same feeling to what you were saying. It's like, God, I'm so glad. It's not about those times when it's easy and you want to do it, because that's easy. When you're all excited, motivated, jacked up, the weather's perfect, you got the right outfit on, everybody's looking, it's cool, the crowd is there, like perfect conditions, right? Like who wouldn't want to be there? Oh, it's the
Yeah.
best class, it's the best instructor, it's he and her there, like, oh, this is awesome, we're all gonna ball out together. What about when it's a perfect day outside, but here it's not? What about when it's cold and it's dark and it's raining and it's wet and you don't want to go, and that etc. That's the difference. That's the difference between an amateur and a pro. That's the difference between somebody who really wants to be there and somebody that doesn't. And not to say that one is necessarily wrong or that one is bad, but if you're trying to do something, if you're trying to push yourself, take yourself somewhere, find something within, you're going to have to go through a little bit of resistance to do that. Because the easy way, well, if that was the case, we'd all pretty much be there. The body loves to be coddled. The human body will always try and take
Yeah.
the easy way, but it's the thinker that's got to try and find the resistance, and the obstacle is the way.
Yeah, exactly. The growth happens when you get through that resistance. Definitely.
So I got to say, more men than women are easier to kind of talk into this diet. I've had more women speak out of fear or ignorance or just skepticism. I don't know. How's it going to make me feel? What's it going to do to me emotionally, psychologically? What's my cycle going to change? How my mood, my hormones, kind of imbalance. What can you speak on to that as far as in dispelling rumors or empathizing with other women?
I get a lot of those messages as well. A lot of women are afraid of weight gain on this diet. And I think that that's just a misconception, and it comes from them just not having the knowledge, because when you eat a lot of protein, you're extremely satiated, and it makes it very difficult to overeat. When you're eating mostly carbs, sugar, even if they're healthy carbs and you're, out getting a smoothie, or you think that getting an acai bowl is healthy, you're probably overeating calories, and those calories aren't satiating you because they are void of protein. So when you're eating enough protein for your body weight, then it's almost impossible to overeat. So that's going to prevent any type of weight gain if that's what you're afraid of. And also, just with the way the body processes protein, it takes more energy to actually break it down than it does for carbs. So I think that if that's what you're afraid of, then I wouldn't let that stop you, because you might even lose weight, you might keep the same weight, you might gain muscle, but I really don't think this way of eating, you'll be disappointed with the way you look. And then in terms of hormones, eating enough protein and fat really is the best for regulating hormones and your mood. I've always had issues with mood, and I would have crashes during the day. And with eating this way, I would say, especially like the high fat, that's regulating your hormones, and it should definitely help with your cycle and with period cramps and any symptoms that you get, because those healthy fats really are helping with your hormones. So that is another reason to try it out. And it's something that I've definitely seen directly. I've always struggled with my hormones, but it's definitely a journey I'm still on, so I can't completely speak to it. But I'm really hopeful in the future that I'll be able to speak more to it, just because I have struggled with very painful periods, endometriosis, and acne. My skin has cleared up greatly since starting this diet. There has been some trial and error. I did figure out that eggs were triggering my acne. So unfortunately,
Wow. Wow.
yeah, I can't eat eggs, which is really hard because I know they're so nutritious. And once I cut those out, my skin completely cleared up. And then I tried adding them in again, and they did trigger me again because they do have a high amount of estrogen. So if you're already producing a lot of estrogen or have a hormonal imbalance, they can cause acne. But once those are cut out, my skin has never been so clear and glowy. And I know that it's all those healthy fats.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that too. That's, I think, one of the most important parts, because stereotypically, yeah, it's kind of easier for me in my experience to convince the guys like, hey, caveman eat steak, okay, no problem. But today's woman, it's a little different. Like, she's more informed, she's more particular, she's going to ask, she wants to know, as you should. I wouldn't just walk into this fight either and just be like, yeah, I'll take your word for it because you said so. No. When this was first brought up to me through a friend of mine several years ago, I was just coming out of the World Natural Bodybuilding World Championships as a vegan.
Wow. I've never,
Literally
that's crazy.
as a vegan. And my buddy, who's my best friend in the world, is talking to me about this. And he's like, yeah, man, this carnivore diet, da, 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 da. And I'm in my mind, I'm like, this dude's got a lot of nerve. Like, I had a lot of ego, pride at the time, to where I'm like, I literally just finished a bodybuilding competition for, world championship here, and you're giving me dietary advice. And he was not anywhere near a specimen of health in a person and how he lived or anything. But nonetheless, he's like, yeah, man, I saw this on the podcast and I've been reading about it. And I was like, all right, dude, what rabbit hole of Reddit or whatever backdoor, website and chat room you found this in? Like, go back there, because like I'm busy enjoying the ride of being a professional athlete and showing off my trophies. And he's like, dude, just check it out, blah, 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 blah. I was like, all right, I'll look into it. And so I did. And I read and I listened and I watched and I read and I listened and I watched. I read, I listened and I watched. And I was like, man, this is really making me scratch my head, because a lot of the things made sense to me. And it's something that I wish other people could do, because our religions, or rather our diets, can be more divisive and polarizing than our religions. Truly. more dividing and polarizing than our political affiliations. Truly. And I think that's ridiculous. Why should we hate each other? Why should family members not be able to hang out with one another? Friends no longer be friends because of one person is a vegan and the other person is a carnivore, or not even a carnivore, just not a vegan. And, pescatarian, standard American, whatever, paleo, vegetarian. But my Lord, the divisiveness based on diets is extreme. And that was one of the hardest things for me to actually get past, because I was like, what are my ethics? What are my morals? I've been a vegan for 14 months now. I'm going to abandon all that. I coached people as vegans, as a nutrition coach, and as a personal trainer. I was in New York. I also did it as a vegetarian. And I took these diets on for a minimum of 1 year in order to be able to do that, so that I could relate to clients. I could relate to people and how they were feeling, and be able to offer them legitimate advice based on my own understanding, not just from theory or from study. But, hey, I was a vegan for over a year. I was a vegetarian for over a year. I standard American, obviously enough time, paleo, et cetera, keto. But when this one came up to me, I was like, wow, I've never been into that. So where's this going to go? I don't know. And swallowing my pride was probably the hardest thing for me to do, because I'd invested so much time, confidence, and emotion into this other world, these other worlds. And to give that up, I was like, does this make me a traitor? I don't know. But again, I couldn't deny what I saw to be kind of facts of contents of food, ingredients versus non ingredients. Like I was a vegan bodybuilder, which means you're not a raw vegan, because you cannot get those macronutrients in the ratios that you want them naturally. They have to come from supplements, because they don't exist like that in the natural world. People say, well, you can eat a bunch of broccoli. Do you know how much freaking broccoli it would take? We're talking about a dump, or spinach. We're talking about dump trucks, literally, right? Or beans. Well, do you know how many the carbs that would come with that, and the anti-nutrients with both of those, right? That come with that, as opposed to once you go carnivore and it's like right here, something the size of your fist, to be able to give you the full macronutrient profile of protein and fat, all of which are going to have essential and non-essential amino acids, which do not exist in the plant kingdom, the enzymes that are going to come with that, the micronutrients, the minerals in the bioavailability that they're going to have in compared to the other things. That was the first telling sign to me, to where I was like, whoa, this is hard for me not to deny now, because I'm looking at objective data. And I think that's the hardest thing for most people, is to do that. Because if you look at these things on a pie chart or a T chart, just kind of like pros and cons, one versus the other, I think it's hard to deny it, because it's right there. But our pride and our egos and the time we have invested in these things, I've been a vegan chef for 20 years, or I've been a vegetarian for 30 years, or I've been eating this way for 50 years. How do you give that up? How do you tell someone to try that? Like, how do you get past that? I don't know. But I know that for me, that was one of the biggest things. And I'm curious to hear what you think about that, and what people could do to maybe be more exploratory or open-minded, not to be telling someone what to do, but like, where does that go?
Yeah. I mean, if you look back on my old Instagram feed, a lot of it is big salads, lots of vegetables, lots of produce. And it was really difficult for me to all of a sudden be posting all this meat. And it's almost like I did a complete switch. I always did eat a lot of protein, and I ate a lot of salmon and chicken and occasional red meat. And I did eat a lot of bison too. But still, swapping out those other things, I kind of did have to like swallow my pride and just be like, this is an experiment. I'll see where this goes. And I have for sure lost a lot of followers. I've lost some friends. Friends have unfollowed me. They don't want to see my steak every night. They don't want to see
Yep.
my meat.
Yep.
And I have had moments where I've almost had to grieve the person I was before and the way that I ate before,
Mm.
because it was a big part of me that, I loved going to local farms and getting all this produce. I loved going and getting smoothie bowls with my mom on the weekend and exploring all these healthy vegan cafes, even though I wasn't vegan. I still loved trying all these different like health food places. And now I have had to really let that go. And I have had nights where I've just cried about it and I've literally grieved it. And I think that that's a process I've had to go through, and other people might have to go through that. But I think that if you're finding all this new information on how nutrient dense these animal foods are, and you're not letting yourself try it because of your pride, then I think that's really sad. And I honestly feel bad for people like that, because you're just staying stuck and you're never going to get to, your best feeling self. You're never going to get that like nirvana, which I feel so good all the time. And I wouldn't have gotten to this place if I had stayed stuck in my old ways or stayed with old information. There's always new, like science backed things coming out that I'm learning about. And if something comes out in a couple of years that goes against what I'm doing now, then I'm not going to just deny it. I'm going to accept it for what it is and try it out on myself and see how I feel. So I don't think that's why I don't like to say I'm going to eat one way forever, because if I figure something else out that works better and that makes me feel better, I'm going to do that.
Oh, indeed. Indeed. A friend of mine the other day, I was having lunch with, he was like, dude, so what's next for you? You're going to go, full vampire and just drink blood for a month? I was like, that's a hell of an idea. you
If a
know,
study came out that said that, I mean, maybe.
I don't know. I might have to be the N of one and kind of trailblaze that. I don't know. Um, I'm glad you talked about um, grieving. Not that I'm happy to hear that, but I can understand. Um, been there too, still there too. Like even just walking down the street and seeing people happy and laughing, bars, restaurants, whatever, just being themselves, being free people of the world. Um, but also seeing a sadness about them based on how they look, not how they're dressed, but to look at someone and be able to see they are metabolically sick, right?
Yes.
To see that, know that they have metabolic syndrome, especially children. Grown-ups and parents are one thing, but like when I see kids like that, it kills me. And to see people continually consuming the things that are literally killing them, because that's the cycle, right? The cycle is eat these foods, take these pills, stay weak, stay scared, stay valuable. That's
Really.
how the human commodity works, because health and intelligence make you very, very unattractive as far as in value to other people, because we don't need what's being offered in that sense, right? You feel good. Great. You don't need any pills. You're not sick. You don't want to subscribe to that. You're not watching that. You're not paying money to go there. You're not buying these things. It takes you away from a lot of the mainstream consumerism of the world, especially the Western world. And that, I think, is probably one of the toughest things that I could, or that I've had to deal with other people that I've coached, where they've felt isolated, where they felt like they're on this hero's journey, or this lone wolf, pun intended, kind of walk, where they're like, dude, I don't know, man. Like, this is great. I feel great, but I feel like I'm on an island. I feel like I've ostracized myself from my friends, from my family, from normalcy. How do you deal with that? How do you, Jillian,
Yeah.
deal with
So
that?
I think that having at least an online community of people that are also animal based is really helpful. And that helped me a lot in the beginning as well, just when I had questions or I was trying to figure out how to eat this way. And so I don't notice the loneliness of it as much in my day to day, but I recently went on a work trip, like I said, and I did really notice, because I'm at a
Mm,
convention where 99.9% of people are eating mostly carbs and sugar, and the food that's being served, they're sitting all day in their seats, they're not getting fresh air, they're not exercising, and I'm the probably 0.1% of people that is getting up before the convention, getting my workout in, getting my steps in, getting sunlight. I actually brought a red light mask that I put on every
Nice.
morning. And
Nice.
I did these things so that I would feel my best. And I made sure that my lunch, I was getting a carnivore lunch and that there would be no gluten contamination. I was researching restaurants ahead of time that I would be able to eat at, making sure I had a tea kettle in my room so I could take my magnesium supplement every night,
Nice.
doing all of these things. And it is lonely. And I did have a breakdown at one point because it is really, really hard to do things that nobody else is doing. I also haven't mentioned on here, but I do not consume alcohol. I haven't consumed alcohol in probably a year and a half now. And even before that, it was very light. I had consumed a lot in the past when I was in college and post college. Yeah, I drank a ton, so much. It disgusts me now, but being one of the probably few people that didn't drink on the trip, having to make the decision to not go to the after party, to go home, to get myself in bed so that I would get the optimal sleep, so that I could participate the next day and feel my best. It's really difficult and it's really hard saying no to peer pressure. And as someone that wants, everyone to like me and I want to excel at my job, I was nervous to say no and to take care of myself. And it does take a lot of effort to do. And especially, I'm only 25 years old. So a lot of my peers are not interested in the way that I'm living a similar lifestyle. So it is something I noticed, but I do always come back to thinking about how good I feel and that I almost feel sorry for the people that don't feel as good as me and that are just stuck in this hamster wheel of not feeling great, sitting all day, taking medication, eating sugar, having a high, crashing, all of those things. I just really try to go back to feeling sorry for them and come back to what's best for me. And if they want to live that way, that's okay. I'm not judging them, but I just know that the way I'm living aligns best with how I want to feel.
Well, I don't know if you can say it better than that. That's the truth right there. That is the gospel. I Yeah, same thing. Not a judge, not a critic. If anything, to me, it's like I'm like, guys, check this out. Like you gotta come see this, man. Like you
Keep
guys
saying
don't know what I found here. Like this is some serious shit. Like that's how I feel. And it's not like I'm bragging. Like, look at my food. Look at this. Look how I feel. I'm so on cloud nine all day long. Not to say that like bodaciously, right? Or braggadociously, but it's like, y'all, I'm telling you, just try it. You know what I mean? Like if it was a drug at a party, you would do it. My God. But this, because it's not something that aligns with you or your way of thinking or what you think to be right or in vogue, it gets questioned. And I was the same, drinking 8 nights a week for 20 years and doing all the other stuff. And to have found this, I'm grateful to my friend who introduced it to me against the total grain of my personality at the time. But I don't know if there's any going back now. I think there's only being here and further cultivating this, or like my buddy said the other day, start drinking blood or something. I don't know, but or maybe like what you said, when the next evolutionary bit of science comes out and we go, oh, hey, now it's kind of changing the curve a little bit. Like, okay, now we're going to do that. Maybe it's a little bit less of this, a little bit more of that, or hey, we can bring this back into the fold now because we figured it out. Awesome. Just being informed, right?
yes.
And like you on the trip, being prepared. That's probably, I'd say, one of the biggest keys for anyone, especially at the beginning of this. And that's what I do with my clients for sure, is that first 30 days preparation is paramount, because you need to know where you're going to be, what's going on, how you can have things with you. Because if you get caught in a desert, you can get in trouble real fast, right? Peer pressure, social pressure, the voids, not having things around, any one of those things can be difficult to deal with, but all of them at once, like you're for sure going to fail. If
Oh,
it's just being in the wrong place, you can leave. But if it's the wrong place, it's late at night, you got some people around that are not the best influences, and you don't have a way home to, the writing's kind of on the wall. So like knowing what situations not to necessarily put yourself into. Like me, I'm not going to go to club space at 3 o'clock in the morning with X, Y, and Z, who I know like to stay up for several days at a time doing X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to put myself in that situation. Right.
Yeah.
And it's a similar thing with this. And it's not out of avoiding those things, it's about choosing to do otherwise because it's what makes me feel the best. And it never lets me down. You know,
Yes.
and that certainty.
Electrolytes, I had my supplements, I had a big bag of my beef sticks, my jerky. I even had some more like snacky things like pork rinds or cheese crisps. So that if I do want to have something, like I see everyone having chips and I want to have something, I can have those
Pork
things.
rinds. Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a way to do it and still have fun. I mean, it's I'm not like trying to tell people not to have fun, but if you're prepared, then it definitely is much easier. And, you know, some people they might want to try the things you have. You know, I was handing out electrolytes like they were candy. And so it's just, yeah, like you said, being prepared. And I think that if you're prepared, you really have no excuse to fall into the trap of, you know, eating something that you know is not going to make you feel great or staying out too late. I mean, you can always just Uber back on your own. I did that. I just think that some people are afraid not to follow the crowd.
No doubt. No doubt. So where can people find you? And where and when will your coursework be done and you'll be a fully baptized primal health leader and coach?
So you can find me on Instagram at Jillian Jacobson Wellness, and I should be certified in about 5 months. And you'll be able to start having one-on-one coaching with me. And I'm also thinking of maybe doing group coaching. So just keep up with my Instagram. I'm always posting on my story. I'm posting my meals. I post recipes. I post a lot of mental health tips as well, workouts. I'm very into fitness. And yeah, so if you could just, you know, give me a follow, don't be afraid to reach out and message me, ask me questions. I'm really excited to be able to work with people as well.
God, awesome. So Jillian Jacobson Wellness,
Yes.
carnivore, animal-based eater and athlete, and soon to be primal health coach. About to take the world by storm. Look out. Well,
Yeah.
appreciate the time today. Glad you stopped by, and we'll have to do it again, maybe over a meal, you know.
Yes. I would love that.
I
Thank you
think
so much.
the menu will be easy to decide.
Oh yeah. We know there has to be a rip.
Yeah, I think so too. You know, I've been actually eating picanha a lot
I
lately, and
haven't tried that yet, and I need
it's been
to.
pretty good. It's been pretty good. And then I'm still a sucker for the stuff when it goes on sale. I found a place the other day that was doing chuck roast, or rather ground chuck for $2.99 a pound on like Tuesdays. I was like, I'm sorry, what did you say? How much was that?
I
So
love a good sale. I'm
yeah.
always checking Whole Foods and Sprout sales every week. I check.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, we'll see you next time. Appreciate it today, Jillian.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.